Welcome to day 1 of our tax challenge. So the first thing we're going to talk about is how to establish a business from a tax perspective. This is a question that we see all the time with new business owners and also people who say, hey, I started this activity, it's a business, I don't know if I established it properly for tax purposes, okay? The first thing that you need to understand is that a business's taxation is different from the business's legal structure, but the business's legal structure is going to determine your default tax treatment, okay? So when you go to establish a business, you can do this a couple of different ways. So you can just go out and you can just start an activity, okay, with the intent of making money, and the IRS can consider that a business as long as it meets other requirements for business versus hobby regulations, which I'm going to go through later. But let's say I want to do landscaping, okay, and I'm going to go out and I'm just going to go knock on doors and I'm going to say, hey, I can, mow your lawn, I can redo your plants right here, I can take care of your bushes, I can plant flowers, etc. Okay. From a tax perspective, as far as the IRS is concerned, I don't have to do anything beyond that. I don't have to do any sort of registration for that business. If it's just me going out there and saying, hey, I'm going to do your landscaping now, like, will you pay me for it? That can be considered a business as far as the IRS is concerned. Now, a couple of things you need to keep in mind. You may have a requirement to register a business legally with your state and or city, local jurisdiction, county, etc. Okay, so you need to determine what is your legal requirement for registration. There are some types of businesses in specific states, specific cities, etc., that are required to form a specific type of entity when it comes to the legal side of things. Okay, you may be required to form an LLC. You may be required to form a corporation. You may be prevented from forming a corporation from the legal side of things, okay? You need to figure out what your legal requirements are for that business first. Once you determine your legal requirements, then we determine your tax requirements, okay? So there's a couple of different ways in which your business may be taxed. And this is the IRS website right here. This just says business structures. I'm just going to show this to you. The IRS actually has a lot of helpful content on their website. I'm going to be referencing this a lot. It can be a little bit hard to navigate if you don't know where you're going. But these are the basic types of businesses that the IRS sees. And I'm going to show you which each of these mean, okay, and what that means for your requirement to register with the IRS. Now keep in mind, your registration with the IRS may be different than what you're required to do with your state, local, etc. Okay? I always recommend call your state, call your city. They will help you. Okay? So, let's say that you've gone through and you have established your business. You've taken care of all of the legal requirements that you have to register your business in your state. Okay? There's going to be a couple of default tax treatment types that I'm going to go over, and then I'm going to explain how those are registered with the IRS, okay? Some of these are different types of tax treatments that you can elect. That's for a separate video because I want to make sure that I don't rush through that. So from a legal perspective, if you have formed your business, there's a couple of things that you need to understand and a couple of questions you need to be able to answer before you determine if you need to register with the IRS. The first thing is the number of owners for the business. How many owners are in the business? Is there one owner or is there two or more owners? Okay. If there's only two owners, are the two owners married? Right? So you want to know, is there one owner or is there two owners? Now, there's one owner. I'm going to talk about one owner first. If you have one owner, and you are either not registered, you didn't have to legally register with your state, or if you have registered as anything other than a corporation. Okay, so this includes limited liability companies. If you go and you have an LLC and you are one owner, you are automatically, for tax purposes, structured as a sole proprietorship. Okay, right here, a sole proprietorship. If you are one owner and you have registered legally your business as anything other than a corporation, unless you have like a nonprofit, right? We're talking about for-profit businesses, okay? If you have registered as anything other than a corporation, you are considered a sole proprietorship with one owner. Sole proprietorships technically do not have to register with the IRS for an EIN. EIN stands for an employer identification number. The reason being is sole proprietorships are what we call disregarded entities for tax purposes, okay? It's just there, you put a schedule on your personal tax return. You can have an EIN if you want to, okay? But you're not required to as a sole proprietorship. Now there's an exception there. If you are going to be hiring employees, you will need an EIN. You'll need to register with the IRS for an EIN. But if it's just going to be you, let's say I form an LLC, okay, it's just me, I'm the one going around doing the business, I don't technically need to register with the IRS for an EIN. Now it's probably a good idea because if you're going to get your own business bank account, which you need to, okay, we'll talk about that later. If you're going to get your own business bank account, you will most likely need an EIN, okay? So you don't necessarily have to get an EIN, but it's a good idea to, all right, with a sole proprietorship. Now, if you have a business that has one owner and you have registered as a corporation in your state, you're automatically taxed as a C corporation. So this is really a subchapter C. You're not automatically taxed as a subchapter S corporation. Nobody is automatically taxed as an S corporation. This is a special election. So if you have registered and you're one owner and you've registered a corporation in your state, you are automatically taxed as a C corporation. You need to go get an EIN, okay? That's how you register with the IRS. You get an EIN, right? Now, if you have more than one owner, if you have two or more owners, if you have registered as anything other than a corporation in your state, you are automatically taxed as a partnership. A partnership requires an EIN, okay? A partnership requires an EIN. If you have two or more owners and you have registered as a corporation in your state, you're automatically taxed as a C corporation, a subchapter C corporation. You should get an EIN. Okay, so essentially, every business is required to establish their business with the IRS by filing for an EIN or an employer identification number, unless there is one owner, it is not a corporation with the state, and there's no employees. Okay? If you are a sole proprietorship, one owner, which means that you have not registered as a corporation. Remember, an LLC is a limited liability company. That's different than a corporation. So you could have an LLC with one owner. And you are not required to get an EIN, an employer identification number, unless you hire employees. Okay, you're probably going to need it to get a separate bank account. But that's how you register with the IRS. That's how you say, hey, I have a business. Okay, is you get this employer identification number. That is essentially a social security number assigned to the business, okay? That's how you register. It's super simple. Really the most complicated part is making sure that you have legally structured your business the way that it's supposed to be structured with your state and your local taxing authorities, okay? From a tax perspective, it's really just as simple as getting an employer identification number. Now, there may be some other things that you need to register for if you're in a specific industry, but in general, this is what you need. So that's the start, how you start a business, essentially with the IRS, and you register it. You just need an EIN, unless you're a sole proprietor with no employees. Then you don't have to have an EIN, okay? So next, I'm going to actually show you how to get your employer identification number. Do not pay a service for your employer identification number if you're comfortable answering the questions on the form. Okay, you do not need to pay a service for your EIN. It is free on the IRS website, unless they're providing other services like registering with the state, or if you ran into a hiccup with the questions on the EIN application. Okay, so I'm going to go over that next, and I will see you in the next video.